Hi, I'm Chris, and today, you and me, we're gonna put together a TUOTEG convert folding fat tire e-bike. First, we start with a box. You've got 3 band straps on here we're gonna need to snip off. Now, if you're the tough guy type, you might just wanna the top flap off of here through sheer brute force. Me, I'm a refined individual, so I'm gonna pull these staples out of here with my needle nose pliers. And now the reveal. Now, e-bikes in general are a little bit heavy, so you're gonna wanna find the biggest, strongest, burliest individual you can to help you take this thing out of the box. Why don't you grab that side? There we go. Don't forget to grab your small parts box as well. So now we've got our bike out of the box. We're gonna start by removing the front wheel and cutting all these zip ties and taking all the packing material off. Helpful if you have a side cut's one of my favorite tools to cut your zip ties, but scissors will work for you too. First thing that comes off is your front wheel with your front fender. You can set that stuff off to the side. Now I'm just digging into the parts box. In here you're gonna find your owner's manual, your battery charger, your kickstand, seat post, saddle. There are 2 axle caps for your front wheel and your pedals. So now we've got your bike stripped of all of its packing materials and we're ready to start assembly. We want to put your front wheel on, but first I want to get this stem and handlebar out of our way. Now this is a folding bike, so we've got a pretty unique stem here. Essentially, when you bring it into the upright position, there's a locking lever that you click like so. In order to get it set up for the first time though, we're gonna have to put this stem column in there before we lock it into place. There is a notch, a groove I should say, that mates up with a notch in the stem column. So you need to get those things aligned in order to install. Now we can take our fork and turn it around so it's straight, and we'll put our wheel in. We'll start with our front fender here. This mounts to the fork crown. You'll see you have a bolt already installed in here. You just want to remove that. Now you've got 2 tabs on your fender here to go on either side of your fork crown. So here I'm using a Phillips screwdriver and a 10mm box wrench. And I'm gonna push this fender as far up as it can go to make sure I have clearance for my front wheel and tire. So your convert will ship with a dummy axle in the fork. This is to protect the fork dropouts in shipping. So really we just take these should be loose enough we can just take our fingers and loosen them up. Take that axle out. Your front wheel ships with some axle protectors on. that you can pull off and discard. Now you'll notice you have a disc brake rotor on here. That we're gonna have to make sure goes in between the disc brake calipers. Before we put this in though, we're gonna loosen these axle nuts so you have plenty of room to work. And make note that you've got a safety washer here with a little tab on it. So now you can lift up the front end of your bike. Okay. As you're installing, you just want to make sure your safety washer tab is inserted into the hole in the fork dropout before you tighten it down. This just keeps your wheel from falling out if your axle nuts were to ever come loose. In your small parts box, you'll also find these little axle nut covers. Those go over your axle nuts, and they are just a protective measure so you don't scratch up your shin when you're walking around the garage. Now I'm going to turn the bike around so I can show you installing the kickstand. Your convert ships with a chainstay mounted kickstand. The bolts are installed into the kickstand when it ships, so you just want to remove those quickly. The kickstand itself mounts to the inside of the chainstay plate, and then your bolts thread in from the outside. Here I'm using my 5mm hex wrench to tighten these bolts down. Once they're snug, I'm going to use my torque wrench. Now this is a pretty standard torque wrench you can pick up at any hardware store. You preset it to your desired torque, and then it will click when that torque is reached. So for these bolts, we're looking at 9 foot-pounds or about 11 Newton meters. So your kickstand does have this little bolt here for adjustability. Because the Convert is such a short bike with such small wheels, it is adjusted at its shortest position. And you're gonna wanna leave it there any longer and the bike will probably tip over the opposite direction. Thank you to Alyssa. Thank you, thank you. Okay, let's turn this puppy back around. Your Convert has a little bit different stem and handlebar setup than you'll see on most bikes. Most notably, it folds away when it's not in use. But it also has adjustment up and down via this quick release clamp for different heights of riders. You can rotate the handlebars front to back with this quick release clamp here, depending on your preference for handlebar lever position. But it's also got this big lever here that allows the whole thing to fold away when not in use. So on this model, your stem bolts are way the heck down here. So I'm gonna grab my 5mm hex wrench and I make sure that my handlebar and wheels are aligned. And then I'm gonna tighten these down. Then I'm gonna grab my torque wrench to make sure these bolts are tight. I'm gonna tighten them down to 15 foot-pounds or 20 Newton meters. Next thing we're gonna do is install your seat post and your saddle. So we want to put some grease down in your seat tube of your frame so that nothing seizes up in there. You could use a popsicle stick, a butter knife, a brush, or my method, the glove. I can do this all day. Grease. In this case, maybe a dime-sized dollop, nickel-sized dollop will do the trick. Just get it all the way around the inside of that seat tube. That'll make sure that your seat post can move freely in there. You can adjust it up and down, no problem. The convert comes spec'd with this straight steel seat post. It does have a minimum insertion marking on there. Essentially, all that means is we don't want to raise the seat post above that line. All right, now we can install your saddle. This clamp has 2 nuts on either side. They use a 13mm box wrench to tighten them down. All you gotta do is set them on there. So we wanna have our saddle approximately parallel with the ground. So I'm gonna take my 13mm wrench here and loosen these nuts up just a little bit so I can reposition this saddle. Okay, when I've got it where I want it, I'm gonna tighten these down. I'm gonna alternate sides so I'm tightening the clamp evenly. When I start to get close, I'm gonna wanna make sure that I've got my saddle aligned with my frame here. Essentially what you wanna do here is you just wanna check that your saddle doesn't move front to back and that your seat post doesn't twist left to right, and you know it's good. If you need to adjust the height of your saddle, simply release the quick release seat clamp here. You can move that up and down to where is appropriate and clamp it back down. Next, we're gonna install your pedals. Your convert folding bike comes with these cool folding pedals. First thing we need to do is put a little bit of grease on these pedal spindles. I'm gonna get out my grease glove, little dollop on these pedal axles. Now, one of the biggest mistakes people make when installing pedals is trying to put the wrong pedal on the wrong side. Why is this important? Because your left pedal is not righty-tighty. It is counterclockwise or left-hand threaded. So you gotta make sure you get the right pedal on the right side or the correct pedal on the correct side. Both of them are the same. So on our pedals, we do have little markings on the ends that say R and L for right and left. And this is right and left according to how you're sitting on the bike. You can start by just threading these in by hand. This is not a medieval weapon. It's a pedal wrench. So if you got one of these sitting around, great. If you don't, a standard 15mm box wrench will do the trick. Okay, now I'm gonna turn it around to the left side for you. Okay. So your convert has a lot of helpful features that allow you to fold it and make it as compact as possible. The first thing you want to do is fold up your pedals. They each come with a little ring. You simply pull up with your finger and flip them up. The main pivot point is right here in the center of the frame, where you've got a quick release lever. You then flip this whole lever over. There's a detent in here, so you need to lift up just slightly to release the mechanism. And then now you can fold the bike at that point. You may want to remove your saddle and seat post, or you can just put it at its lowest setting. And you can flip the whole thing around. And this is gonna take you a little bit of practice to get good at, you know. Oh. Now you notice that the front end of the bike is resting on this little frame stand. Finally, you've got the handlebar stem column lever that you release. And that kind of folds over the front end there. So now we're in our most compact state. So you can throw this easily in the back of a trunk, in a closet, or anywhere that you're space constrained. All right, now when you're ready to ride again, how do you put it back together? Well, first you flip up your stem column and handlebars, lock them down with the lever, and you can swing the whole front end back around. Oops. Keep in mind there's that little detent in here, so you gotta press up on that before that'll close. And then flip it over. Don't pinch your fingers, as my mother would say. Your pedals will flip right back up. And then bring your saddle back to your preferred riding height. So now you're all assembled and ready to ride. Thanks for watching. If you need any help or support, if you have any questions on your bicycle assembly or bike maintenance, or you just want to chat about the weather, don't hesitate to give us a shout. It's support@tuoteg.com.